The second generation has brought us a whole lot of things, such as the day and night cycle, exploring 2 regions at once, and color. But I'd say another thing that's also important are 2 new evolutions, Espeon and Umbreon. I've already done Espeon in the form of a live stream, so you can check that out if you want to. Today we'll be doing Umbreon. So how do the 2 differ, you may ask? Well, they both have the same base stat total of 525, but the main difference is where they're spread. Umbreon is built more defensively with 110 defense and 130 special defense, while Espeon has 130 special attack and 110 speed. So Espeon is the fast special attacker while also a glass cannon to physical moves, while Umbreon is slow and can't really hit that hard, but it can really tank a punch. But base stats don't describe everything about a Pokemon. Let's take a look at the moveset. Our starting moveset is just Tackle and Tail Whip, which is pretty much identical to Espeon, and then we'll also get Sand Attack, Pursuit, Quick Attack, Confuse Ray, Feint Attack, which is the dark type version of Swift, Mean Look, Screech, and Moonlight. Moonlight we're pretty much not going to use because it's very situational in how much HP it will recover, to the point where Rest is just better in every single way. So we're not going to use that move, but I can definitely see us using Feint Attack, Pursuit in the early game, and maybe Confuse Ray on some hard fights, ? And today, since we're starting with Umbreon, we're not going to get the pre-evolution move of Bite, which would be better than Pursuit, but it is what it is. And then some notable TMs we can get are Headbutt, Curse, Toxic, Zap Cannon, Hidden Power, Iron Tail, Return, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Mud Slap, Swift, and Dream Eater. We also get Nightmare as well if we want to, but I don't think we're really going to use Dream Eater or Nightmare. I know they introduced those moves to like almost every Pokemon just so they can counter the rest tactics, but not many trainers in the whole game will even use those kind of tactics except for Red Snorlax. So yeah, we're not going to be worrying about those too much. So without further ado, let's go take a look at how Umbreon does in Pokemon Crystal. Since we can use Game Hook to set our DVs to whatever we want to, the time starts upon selecting New Game, and you may notice right away I'm setting the time to 1 AM. The reason I do this is so when I get to Celadon City, I can get the TM for Curse, which is what I actually need to defeat Red, because Umbreon just cannot attack hard at all, but it does have the bulk to survive quite a lot of hits. Although I will say during the run, I had to pause my game and then go to sleep because it was getting late, and then when I unpaused my game and I resumed the run, it became daytime and I was unable to get Curse without having to start the run over. And apparently Game Hook cannot change the time, just the day of the week, so I just hacked the TM for Curse into my bag, so I won't have to start the whole run over. But this only really much saves like, what, 5 seconds? But the only reason I did it was because I paused the run overnight, and then when I came back it was daytime, so I did this to avoid having to start the run over. Also, since it's very late at night, this route has a chance of spawning Poliwag, which I do get a couple encounters for, and it only has Bubble, and these things actually give quite a decent amount of experience, which is quite nice. Although, look at the damage output I'm dealing. Like, I'm surviving hits, but it takes like 6 hits to knock out a level 4 Poliwag. Plus we're in the medium fast group, so we're not going to be leveling up that fast, and since I have to fight a lot of different trainers to keep up the damage output, it's not going to be that great, but Espeon had to do that training as well because of how braille it is. But one fight I don't have to worry about is the first rival battle. This battle is really never hard at all, plus even with Espeon, even though its defenses were absolutely terrible, this rival fight is just never a huge problem at all, so there was pretty much no reason for bringing this up, I just thought I'd mention it. And then throughout the early game routes, I defeat every wild Pokemon I come across, and I defeat every single trainer as well. This is going to be a theme for quite a while, especially since we need to keep up our levels. I even do the Sprout Tower. Luckily, I'm not weak to grass, because if I was weak to grass, and I take super effective damage from the Bellsprout's Vine Whip, this place would be a heck of a lot harder to get through. But luckily, we're not using a water type right now, so it's not a big deal. Although when I get to the final sage on top of the tower, if you look on the left hand side, I only have 4 tackles to my name, and the guy has 3 Pokemon. So my plan, instead of leaving the tower to heal, was to stack up a few tail whips on each of them, so that way they'll be one hits with tackle. So let's see how the first attempt goes at doing that. On the first attempt, I set up 5 tail whips on the first Bellsprout, and then I go straight for a tackle, which is a one-hit KO. Although at this point, I am dangerously low on health. On the next Bellsprout, I only use 2 tail whips, and it ends up taking 2 tackles to knock it out. So I'm going to have to take out this Hoot Hoot with 1 tackle, but it's going to take quite a few tail whips, and I get real worried, and then I go for the tackle, it still survives, and I get a loss. That was embarrassing. I decided to try again, especially since I didn't use a potion before this, which was honestly quite stupid of me. But on this attempt of me actually using the potion, I am able to win the fight, so the solution was just more health. So with that out of the way, let's go take on the first gym leader, Faulkner. Faulkner is never really difficult per se, he's just trolly because his Pidgeotto has Mud Slap, and his Pidgey has it as well. But on the Pidgey, even though it's a 3-hit with tackle, which did concern me, the AI never once went for Mud Slap, because the AI detected that Gust or Tackle would do the most amount of damage due to Stab, and plus Mud Slap's only 20 base power, so it just goes for that instead, and I'm able to get the badge on the first try. With only 13 or so minutes on the clock, that is not too bad. Could have been worse. Well, it could have been better, I had that pretty bad reset. I then teach Mud Slap right away, just so I have a way to deal with the Geodude in Union Cave coming up. A couple of the spinners here have Geodude, and if I don't have Mud Slap to deal with them, it's going to be quite painful, especially since I don't get Pursuit for another few levels. So this will help carry us through. Although while I'm in the Union Cave, I go to the bottom floor, and I get the TM for Swift, which Umbreon can learn, and I quickly replace Tackle, because Swift is just better in every single way. I then manage to skip Hiker Anthony, get this hidden full heal behind the well, talk to Kurt, and then he runs off, and I go down the well to chase off Team Rocket. Then Kurt heals me up for free. You can tell because of my power points restoring. A lot of people don't know that. He actually heals you. And before you ask, he does not do this in the remakes. He only does this in Gen 2. So with those differential talks out of the way, let's take on Bugsy. His team can be quite difficult, mostly because of his Scyther. If it stacks up enough Fury Cutters, it will be able to do devastating damage, but my high defense and HP is allowing me to survive at least a couple more turns than Espeon would have. Espeon has gotten destroyed at this fight in routing. And then on the Scyther, I just spam Pursuit. I get a lucky Fury Cutter miss, so it doesn't stack up too much. And then I realize Swift just does more damage, so I start using that. And then I live on 2 HP left. I knock out the Scyther, and I grow up a level, and I have 6 HP remaining. So yeah, at least we first tried Bugsy. But it's not time to relax yet. We still have Rival 2 to take on. He starts off with a Ghastly, and one Pursuit just easily takes care of it. And then on his Zubat, like, nothing really struggles against this thing. Although Supersonic can be quite trolly if it hits, but it doesn't. 2 Swifts takes it out. Now for Quilava. It does use Smokescreen, but luckily since I have Swift, I can just completely ignore all those smoke screens, even though I do get burned near the end, which doesn't really matter because by the time that burn happens, I'm already poised to hit it anyway for the knockout, so yeah, moving on. I go back to the Pokemon Mart and buy some repels, escape ropes, some potions, that kind of stuff, and then I go through the Ilex Forest, get cut, pick up some hidden stuff along the way, and then I have the move tutor guy give me the TM for Headbutt, and then I just teach this to Umbreon right away. Headbutt is just going to be better than Swift because it has 10 more base power and a chance to flinch, but one of the main problems I didn't realize at the time, the chance to flinch only really helps if you're faster than the opponent, and Umbreon does not have that good of a speed stat. So, yeah, it's not going to come in too many times. It was way more helpful with Espeon, that's for sure. I then defeat some of the trainers on Route 34 and enter Goldenrod City. Time to do the Goldenrod errands. I heal at the center to set my Abra Warp Point, and then I go in the underground and defeat a couple of trainers that are down here. Pick up a hidden super potion as well as the coin case, and I also have this guy give my Umbreon a haircut, so because we are going to be relying on return later in the run, and it's just nice just to get a little bit of extra friendship. I don't know if it'll help too much, but Nothing's wrong with a good old-fashioned haircut. I then forgot what to do for a second and realized I forgot to get the bicycle. Since Steve and I have been doing those crystal races, I think the bike is actually worth it to get, especially since you can just register it to the select button. And it is still faster than walking, so it's still worth getting. I then play the lottery, still no winner, and then I get the radio card, buy my Abra from the game corner for teleport, get Kenya from the guard so I can use fly with it later, and then I defeat the trainers up to the national park, and then I talk to this girl here, I think her name's Floria. You have to talk to her in order for the other girl to give you the squirt bottle, but not only that, you also have to defeat Whitney. But the best part about having the Abra, I can just teleport straight back to Goldenrod City. And then before I do anything else, I go take on Whitney. This fight can be quite scary. One reason is that the Clefairy has metronome, so it could use literally anything. I use one headbutt for half damage, and I get a lucky flinch. But the Miltank outspeeds me by 3, and headbutt seems to be doing a 5th, I'd say. And it just stacks up tons of rollouts. So I decide right away to just use a Mud Slap, but I used it a bit too late, and I get a reset. Well, kind of fitting how the Miltank is faster than a cat. Like, how is a cow faster than a cat? Or a dog? Night dog? I don't even know what Eevee is anymore. On the next attempt, I take out the Clefairy with ease, and on the Miltank, I decide immediately to start off with one Mud Slap, and then just spam Headbutt, and I do get some rollout misses, but then the AI actually gets smart, and then uses Stomp on me, and then it's able to get some of its own flinches. But then when it gets low on health, it can just use a frickin' milk drink. Like, I don't know how healthy it is for a cow to drink its own milk, but that seems kinda disgusting. And then I get another reset. Attempt number 3, I use Pursuit on it for some reason, and then it metronomes lock on so its double slap wouldn't miss, but I really wasn't fearing double slap. I wish that was the worst thing I had to fear. And then on the Miltank, I start off with Mud Slap. I decided my plan this time is just to set up all 6, but the thing is, even if I set up all 6, the Miltank can just spam Milk Drink. I'd have to get some lucky flinches, but the main problem is I do not outspeed the Miltank. In hindsight, what I should have done was just come back at level 25, because if I had gone to level 25, I would have outsped the Miltank. I should have gone and trained, but I was just pushing my luck at this point, so I just kept going. 4 resets in though, I get off some Tail Whips, some Mud Slaps, and my plan is, if I can get off enough Tail Whips, maybe I can take out the Miltank before it can use Milk Drink, and then I use a Headbutt, and it lives in red health, and then I get another Headbutt after it used a Milk Drink, and I actually get a critical hit on it. I kinda wish I had that earlier, but still better than not, am I right? I then go to the Pseudo Widow Tree to water it and get it out of the way, and then I realized I forgot to get the Squirt Bottle again, so I have to go teleport back and get it again, and then once the Pseudo Widow's out of the way, I can go straight to Ecruteak City and do some errands there as well. I heal at the Pokemon Center to set it as a teleport point, and then I go to the theater and defeat the Kimono Girls to get the HM for Surf. None of the Kimono Girls really stood a chance against Umbreon because of the bunch, Umbreon is basically the most defensive, and none of them really had a type advantage over me. Unlike when I was doing Espeon, the Umbreon did have a type advantage on me, especially since it was immune to psychic moves, which was my most powerful attacking move. And then once I get Surf, I head east to Mount Mortar, and then I go through it to the other side towards Mahogany Town, and then I defeat every trainer from there up to the Lake of Rage. The reason I do this is so I can get a bunch of extra training in on Morty, and this doesn't really cost too much time because if you come over here and do all the training, you can just use Abra to teleport back to Ecruteak, plus when you have to go back later, all those places are on your fly map, so that means as soon as you get fly after defeating Chuck, I could just fly back to the Lake of Rage or Mahogany Town. You can technically do it as well with the other side if you choose to go all the way to Olivine City and do the lighthouse early, and then you can just teleport back, and then you can just go all the way back to Olivine, to Sandwood, then boom, you have a lot of places open. But I only really do that strat for Pokemon that absolutely need the training, and Umbreon absolutely does need the training. Our hidden power today is meant to help deal with Jasmine a lot better, so it's going to be Hidden Power Ground. Plus, our Umbreon is technically more of a physical attacker because its base attack is 65 while its base special attack is 60. So Hidden Power Ground I felt was the best option to go with. So once I arrive back to Ecruteak City, since this is Crystal, you have to take on the rival and burned tower first. So let's do that. He starts off with his Haunter, and since I have Hidden Power Ground, I can deal with it quite easily, but I misclicked and went for Pursuit, so it actually survives, and the Haunter uses a Curse on me. But luckily in this generation, Curse damage doesn't get inflicted on you the same turn you knock something out. So I'm able to knock out the rest of his team, and even though the Haunter used Curse, I never once took Curse damage. If this was any newer game, I would have been dead by now. I then free the legendary beasts, and then go take on Morty, the ghost-type gym leader, who really shouldn't be a problem at all, I hope. And my hopes were correct. Even though I have a dark-type move that I could use on him, Hidden Power Ground is just going to do more damage, especially since my physical attack is better, and these ghost types have pretty bad defense, and their special defense is just slightly better. So Hidden Power Ground is enough to do the job with Morty's team. And then right away, I get back to Olivine City, and then begin surfing down to Cianwood City. And then once I arrive, I get the secret potion for Amphi the Ampharos, and before I can go deliver it, I go inside the fighting type gym where I pretty much have my biggest disadvantage in Johto, not really including Bugsy because Bugsy only really gets strong if he stacks up enough Fury Cutters. Chuck does have Dynamic Punch, which is 100 base power, but it's only a 50% chance of landing, but it does guarantee confusion. So I do need to be careful about that. Even with my high defense stats and HP, I can still take some pretty serious damage from it, especially since I almost died to a couple of the gym trainers here. So the hopes aren't really looking too good, but let's see how this goes. He starts off with Primeape and I send out Umbreon. I start off by using a Shadow Ball, which is my most powerful physical move right now, and I take it out with the 2-hit. Next up is Poliwrath. It gets off a Dynamic Punch, confuses me, and it consumes my Bitterberry, and then unfortunately Poliwrath lands it again and I get a reset. Okay, that was quite unlucky, let's try that again. I'm gonna skip the Primeape and go straight to the Poliwrath, which is honestly more of a threat. I use Headbutt on it, hoping for some flinches. The Poliwrath does miss a Dynamic Punch, then it went for Mind Reader, and then the next Headbutt just critical hits, so yeah, this fight took less tries than Whitney did, which is not a statement I thought I was going to say in an Umbreon playthrough. I then get the HM for Fly from Chuck's wife, so now I can go pretty much almost anywhere in the game I want to, and the first place I decided to go to was the Lake of Rage, and then at the Shining Gyarados right here, I can just use a Pokédoll on it, which I do allow, but I actually forgot to buy a Pokédoll, so I just defeat it the normal way. It's not really a big deal. 917 experience is quite a lot of experience for a wild Pokemon. And then once I defeat the Red Gyarados, I have to help Lance clear out the Rocket Hideout, which is just boring in its own right. It's all just a bunch of very weak training that's pretty much not helpful to the run at all. Like, I think Pokemon, if they were able to just completely skip the rocket sections of the game and just train off trainers, it'd be a way more efficient use of training. And then once Lance and I clear out the hideout, he gives me the HM for Whirlpool, I teach it to my Krabby, and then escape rope out, and then go take on Price. He starts off with his Seal, and I start off with Feint Attack, which does about half of Seal's health, and then I take it out on the second turn. On the Dewgong, it also does more than half, but that's due to a critical hit. And then the next one doesn't crit, it leaves it in red health, and then the Dewgong uses Rest. So I use this chance while it's asleep to try and knock it out. And then on the final hit I used Hidden Power, and that's enough for the 3-hit. Then on the Piloswine I used Shadow Ball for about a third, another Shadow Ball for a third, while the Piloswine just keeps spamming Blizzard. I'm just hoping the entire time I just don't get frozen, and luckily it doesn't end up happening, and I win on the first try. Now right away I can go back to Olivine City, deliver the secret potion to the Ampharos, and I can go battle Jasmine. Since I have Hidden Power Ground and Magnemite are 4 times weak to ground, the Hidden Power just completely deals with them nicely. But her final Steelix is quite a problem, especially due to its 150 defense. Hidden Power, even though it's super effective, is only doing about a quarter. But luckily, its Iron Tail only does about a quarter because I have quite a lot of defense. But unfortunately on the first attempt, I get unlucky with defense drops and Iron Tail just not missing enough, and I get a reset at the last minute. On the next attempt, the luck really pulled through for me because not only I got an Iron Tail miss, I actually also got a critical hit Hidden Power, so I was able to win on the second try. But you know, only 6 resets this far into the run? That's kind of a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Now next up is the very long Rocket Radio Tower quest, but before I do any of that stuff, I get the TM for Return, which is going to be Umbreon's most powerful move, and then I go down to the next floor down, and today's vitamin of the day is calcium. I really don't need protein, especially since in the final red fight I'm going to be relying on Curse, and in this game, the special attack and special defense are still based off of the same DV stat, and calcium still raises both of them, so I just use that, mainly to just boost my special defense. And then with that out of the way, I just take on the entire Radio Tower's side quest. I don't really want to talk about much of anything here, except for one person, and that is Rival 4 in the basement. His first Pokemon is Golbat, and the first thing I do is use Return, and even though I'm 12 levels higher, it does not KO it in one hit, which is honestly kind of concerning. Like, if this were any other Pokemon that's somewhat decent, it would be dealing way more damage than that. Like, I don't even 2-hit a frickin' Sneasel, and this thing is as defensively capable as a piece of paper. But it still doesn't really matter because since I have a ton of bulk instead of a ton of attacking power, I'm able to survive this fight with only like 18 or 20% of my health taken away, so it's fine by me. So now I'll just skip ahead to when I clear out the tower and get the clear bell, and then I go down to the next floor down, and then Mary will actually give me the pink bow. This will boost my normal type moves by 10%, so I will be equipping this until I need the leftovers for red. And then once all that is done and clear, I go to the ice path, which is to the east of Mahogany Town, and then I get the HM for Waterfall, as well as the TM for Rest, but I actually forgot to get it on my first trip, so after I defeated Claire, I had to come back and get it. But speaking of Claire, let's see how easily I can take her down. One of the main problems with Claire's team in this game is that her first 3 Pokemon are Dragonair, but one move they all have in common is Thunder Wave. And another thing I realized, since I didn't go with Hidden Power Ice, since I decided that Jasmine was more of a threat than Claire, or Lance, I'm going to get hit with Thunder Wave constantly. I did equip a Paralysis Cure Berry, but it was honestly kind of a waste, since I'm pretty much always going to get paralyzed anyway. But luckily, due to my insane bulk, I make it to the Kingdra with 131 HP left, and the Kingdra does go for Smokescreen and eventually a Hyper Beam. Look how little Hyper Beam actually did. That is actually way less than I thought it was going to be, so I really did not need to worry at all. Like, I could have just not had a Paralysis Cure Berry and I would have been fine. However, before I can get my badge, I have to somehow prove to Claire that it actually wasn't a fluke, so I go down to the Dragon's Den, do the quiz, and then I can get my final gym badge. But before I leave and go take on the Elite Four, I go over here and get a hidden Max Elixir. I realized that was there because Scott's Thoughts and Squidgy, who also do crystal runs, would also get this Max Elixir for the Elite Four, so I definitely get it as well. I also get another Max Elixir that's on the way to the Pokemon League. It's a little bit out of the way because you have to go down some ledges, but in my opinion, it's not really out of the way. You just have to make a small little circle, but I get that as well, so now I have 2 of them. I can have one for the Elite Four, and then I can have one to use in Kanto when I need to reduce the amount of times I use the center. And then after I go through the empty and abandoned Victory Road, which is honestly just quite sad to look at now that I think about it, I am stopped by my rival, so I gotta take him on one last time, although it's gonna be pretty easy. However, just to make the video entertaining, let's talk about the fight anyway. He starts with Sneasel, and this time it is actually a one-hit with Return, even though last time it wasn't. On the Golbat, I use Return, but it lives in red health, and then it gets a Confuse Ray on me, so now I'm going to be hitting myself for a while, but luckily I am able to knock it out in no time. And then on the Magneton, I luckily do not hit myself in Confusion and get off a Hidden Power Ground. I plan to do the same thing for Typhlosion. Luckily I break out of Confusion, but the Typhlosion lives, Flame Wheel does hardly anything, and then I can take it and the Haunter out. Oh wait, he has one more, Kadabra. I just use Hidden Power on that as well. I was going to use Return, but I just misclicked and went for Hidden Power, but hey, I won't argue with the results. I then enter the Pokemon League, heal at the center, buy some full restores, and then I can take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. On the Psychic type Elite Four member Will, since I still have Shadow Ball on my moveset, I kept it this whole time just for this fight. Since Shadow Ball is my best physical move to deal with Will's Psychic types, I am able to take care of him real easily. Although I do use Feint Attack on the Slowbro and the Exeggutor because they have lower special defense than defense. But the whole point is, Dark types just really do not struggle with Psychic types. I don't know how many of you knew that, but I thought I would just let y'all know that. On Koga, I use Return on his Ariados, but it lives and it gets off a double team, but luckily I'm able to knock it out before it can set up any more of them. I then deny the chance to learn Moonlight, and then I just continue spamming Return for the entire fight, but man, it just does not feel right to see just how many opponents are just surviving a hit of Return, even though I'm like 9 to 12 levels higher than the opponent, and the fact it's still surviving honestly just quite hurts me a lot. And then on the Fortress, I just spam Hidden Power since it's my best move on it, but I do eventually take it out. I was really worried when it got into low health it would use Explosion, but luckily it did not. And then the Muck goes down with Hidden Power, and then the Crobat goes down to 2 hits with Return. Man, I'm definitely at lower health than when I was at Will, but good to know I still won this on the first try. You all remember when I said that Chuck I would have a huge disadvantage in? Yeah, I also forgot to mention Bruno. On his first Hitmontop, I use a Return to deal over half. The Hitmontop just uses Dig for hardly any damage, and I take it out. Next up is the Hitmonlee. I use one Return, and I knock it out in one hit. That was not a crit either, so that's a good sign. On the Hitmonchan, it gets off a critical hit Mach Punch, and then a Return does about 3/4, and then I can take it out on the next attempt. On Machamp, it can easily take me out with one Cross Chop, so I just use Return, and it deals slightly under half, and then Cross Chop gets a critical hit, and I lose. On the next attempt, I end up setting up Rest on the Hitmonchan, because the Hitmonlee got off a lot of damage on me, and then when I get to the Machamp, I actually do live a Cross Chop without a crit, so that's good to know. And then sadly, the next one, Return, actually did not KO it, but luckily it missed Cross Chop, and even though it used a Max Potion, I'm able to quickly knock it out before anything bad happens. And then on the Onix, even though Onix is really weak and pathetic, I do not feel good taking this thing out with only 8 HP to my name, so I use Rest first to heal myself back up, and then I'm finally done with Bruno. Next up is the final Elite Four member Karen. Umbreon versus Umbreon. I used my own Return to deal about 1/3, and then the Umbreon just missed 2 sand attacks, and I'm able to progress from that thing without any sand in my eyes. On the Vileplume, I use Shadow Ball to deal less than half, it misses a Stun Spore, and then I just go for Return, which actually knocks it out thanks to a crit. On the Murkrow, I use a Return, and it somehow lives in low health. I don't know how this keeps happening. And then afterwards is Houndoom. Luckily, this thing has very bad defense, so one Return actually does put it in red health, but Karen does use a Max Potion, but since I outspeed the Houndoom, it's just going to delay the inevitable. That's all that's going to happen. And then on the Gengar, I use one Shadow Ball for the one hit. We've got one more trainer left. It is time for the champion, Lance. First up is his Gyarados. I use Return to deal basically exactly half damage, and it sets up a Rain Dance, which honestly won't affect me too much, except his next Dragonite that comes out is the one with Thunder, so it will always hit. I'm not sure if that affected the AI's decision to send in that one first, but now I'm paralyzed for the entire fight. But if you remember from the Claire battle, being paralyzed really doesn't affect Umbreon too much, especially now since we have the move Rest. And if I can get the Dragonite to go for Hyper Beam, since it'll have to do that recharge turn, I will have more time to get out of rest and start attacking again. This fight is basically the living embodiment of slow and steady wins the race, although this time, after I defeat the Aerodactyl, I'm down to his Charizard, and then I try to use Rest, and then the Charizard outspeeds me, and then it uses a critical hit Flamethrower and actually knocks me out. That hurts a lot. On the next attempt, I'm able to successfully rest up on the Charizard. Flamethrower does a somewhat decent amount of HP, does like 40 damage, the equivalent of a Dragon Rage, but once I take that out, the final Dragonite is really not that threatening at all, even though it's his level 50. It does have Outrage, which is its most powerful move, but one of the advantages of it using Outrage is that eventually it would get confused and hit itself. When I wake up from rest though, I get off a critical hit return, the Dragonite uses Hyper Beam, and then I can knock out the Dragonite and win against Lance. However, since this is Generation 2 Pokemon Crystal, we have another whole region to do with 8 more gym leaders, and the run ends when we defeat Red. The first thing I do is go back to Professor Elm and get the SS ticket so I can take the boat to Vermilion City. But before I take the boat, I realize the entire time I've been forgetting to go around the region picking up rare candies. So I pick up the rare candy and the PP up in Violet City, the rare candy on Route 34, as well as the rare candy in Mount Mortar that's up a waterfall. And then once those rare candies are obtained, I head to Olivine City, get on the SS Aqua, and I eventually end up in Vermilion City. I kinda take the speedrunner's route when it comes to doing this place. I first start off by getting the rare candy in the Pokemon Fan Club, and then I go use my bike, and I go from Vermilion to Saffron City, and then Saffron City to Lavender Town, and then from Lavender Town I enter Rock Tunnel. The reason I'm going through Rock Tunnel is to get to the power plant. If you head to the power plant through Rock Tunnel, you're able to skip 2 or 3 different trainer battles. Plus, you don't have to go to Cerulean City first. But I've memorized my way through this place quite easily. Not easily, it did take me a ton of practice. I used to speedrun Pokemon Gold, and the layout in Gold and Crystal is basically identical. The main trick of getting through this place is listening for you bumping the wall and keeping an eye out on the Pokeballs that are on the ground. It only takes me a grand total of like 35 seconds to get through here, and then once I escape, I go into the Pokemon Center and immediately get out. This is to set my teleport point back to the power plant, since in this game, you actually cannot fly to the power plant even though it has a center right next to it, so I have to do that so that way I can teleport back. And then once I talk to the manager about the machine part, I can go fly back to Saffron City and then enter Celadon City. I can go in this trash can here to get the leftovers, which is a faster method of getting them than catching the Snorlax, and then now I can begin my small gym leader sweep. I start off with Erica. She starts off with her Tangela, and I use Return, and Return still does not one-hit KO it, not even close. Man, this just hurts to watch. It makes Umbreon feel bad, although this time right here, not that bad of a time. And even though all of Erica's Pokemon are 2 hits with Return, they barely get any damage on me, even with a stab Solar Beam, so I'm able to take her team out and get the Rainbow Badge with ease. But we're not stopping there. The next gym leader I go fight is Sabrina. Sabrina is basically the easiest gym leader in the entirety of Kanto. None of her Pokemon can do anything to me, since I am immune to psychic damage. The only thing she can really do is her Espeon using Quick Attack or Sand Attack. It does try to go for a turn 1 Sand Attack, and luckily it misses, but even if I did get a Sand Attack, the only thing the Alakazam could do is just spam Recover and Reflect, and the Mr. Mime could just spam Reflect, Barrier, maybe use a failed Baton Pass, but yeah, no need to worry about this fight at all. I then, from the gym, bike north to Cerulean City, and then I can get the machine part that's in the gym, and then I can take on the Route 25 Gauntlet of Trainers, where I can see Misty with her lover, and then I get her back to the gym and take her on as well. But before I go back to the gym to take her on, I teleport from where I am straight to the power plant, and then I can return the machine part. And with that returned, then I can fight Misty. On her Golduck, I now have Curse on my moveset, since usually as soon as I get to Celadon is when I would pick up Curse. But on the Golduck, I actually start setting up 3 Curses, and then the Golduck actually does a nice little strategy. It uses the move Psych Up, which actually mimics your opponent's stat changes. That makes the Golduck slower, but it does make it more bulky physically, but it's not enough to stop Umbreon. Next up is the Electric-type gym leader, Lieutenant Surge. I don't have to solve the trash can puzzle, since it's not in Crystal, since they didn't even bother adding it in. I'm kind of glad about that, since the gym puzzle is just annoying as heck. And then on his team is also super easy. Hidden Power Ground is just a one-hit on absolutely everything. It even just demolishes his Magneton since it's 4 times weak to it. And everything else is generally just does not have that good of a defense stat, so I'm able to just take his whole team out with ease. I then fly to Lavender Town, get the expansion card from the radio tower as a reward for restoring power to the power plant, wake up the sleeping Snorlax, run away from it, and then I can go to the western part of Kanto and get the final few gyms out of the way, starting with Brock. On his Graveler, I start off with a turn 1 Curse, and then it goes for Rollout, so I decide to use my Hidden Power on it for the 1 hit, and next up is Rhyhorn. Hidden Power is also a 1 hit with that as well. Next up is his Rock Water type Omastar. I use Hidden Power Ground, and it actually lives on very low health, but its own Surf does like hardly anything. Next up is the Onix. It still knows Bide from Gen 1, which is actually quite hilarious, but that doesn't really make it any better. And then I take out the Onix, and then the Kabutops in 1 hit. The Kabutops is not as defensive as Omastar is, so that's the reason Omastar was able to tank a Hidden Power. The next gym leader I fight is Blaine. Hidden Power Ground is just going to absolutely destroy his team. But although first, just to make sure that I can actually take everything out, I use 1 Curse on the Magcargo so I can make sure everything is a 1 hit. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure absolutely nothing would have survived Hidden Power, but it's better to be safe than sorry. But speaking of safe, that is actually how I feel when I'm fighting Jasmine, who's the 7th gym leader I face. She is the weakest gym leader in the entirety of the Kanto section of Crystal. Her levels are basically lower than Claire's team, because I mean Claire back in Johto has a level 40 Kingdra. Like, none of her Pokemon are level 40. Plus, her Pokemon are generally just quite bad. Although I will say her second Weezing actually does tank my move, and it uses a Toxic on me, but kind of like what I talked about earlier with Curse, Poison will not affect me on the turn I knock out an opponent, so I'm still able to win this fight quite easily. And now, with 15 badges under my belt, there is one more gym leader, the hardest one in Kanto, Blue. On his Pidgeot, I start off by setting up Curse. The funny thing is, the Pidgeot just uses its own mirror move a couple of times and just copies my own Curse, and all that's doing is just making it really, really slow. At the point where I could even outspeed it even with my own Curses. But once I take that out, next up is Rhydon. It gets off an Earthquake, does barely anything, and then one Hidden Power Ground surprisingly does not take it out. That does show you how physically bulky Rhydon is. But next up is the Gyarados. Return takes care of it in 1 hit, although that might be thanks to a critical hit, maybe not thanks to a critical hit. I don't know. I don't know if the crit really mattered. But now that I'm thinking about it, it may have mattered, because when I tried to use Return on the Arcanine, the first one actually leaves it in red health, but the next one is able to take it out. Although, unfortunately, on his Exeggutor, it gets off a Leech Seed on me, which actually takes away quite a bit of my HP in this game. And then on his final Pokemon, Alakazam, similar to Sabrina's, it does not have a good way of dealing with Dark types, so I'm able to get all of my badges in just under 2 hours. That is really nice. I tell Professor Oak I've got all the badges, he lets me go to Mount Silver. I then skip the final rare candy that's right by the house on this route. The reason I skip it is because I got a bit more training than was necessary, so my minimum level for red is level 70, and if I use all the rare candies I have right now, I will get around level 72, so there's no need for me to get the rare candy. I use all of my rare candies to get to level 72, give myself the final moveset of Return, Rest, Curse, and Sleep Talk, equip the leftovers, and I can take on the Champion of Crystal, Red. He starts off with his Pikachu, and then he tries to use Charm, which fails luckily. During the meantime, since my special defense is absolutely enormous combined with my HP, Thunder is only doing like 30 or so damage, 40 damage. I don't really have to worry about it, but I still need to use Rest every now and then to make sure my HP remains high for the rest of his team. And then once I get to +4 attack and then +6 defense, -6 speed, I'm not at +6 attack due to the Pikachu using Charm on me. His next Pokemon is Snorlax. It uses Body Slam, which does like 10 damage, and then it paralyzes me, so I have to use Rest to get rid of it, but I unfortunately stall at it, and then Body Slam from the Snorlax gets a critical hit, and I end up taking a huge reset. On the next attempt, I decide to not set up on the Pikachu as much as I did last time, and just try and set up on the Snorlax. I use Rest whenever I get low on health, and then while I'm asleep, I just use Sleep Talk. Sleep Talk will use one of my moves randomly. It'll either use Curse, Return, or Rest. And in Generation 2, if Sleep Talk uses Rest, even if I'm asleep, it'll still heal my HP back to full. And Snorlax is a really good Pokemon to set this up on, because its only attacking move is Body Slam, which is physical. And then once I get to +6 attack, +6 defense, and -6 speed, it still does not KO the Snorlax in one hit, but I'll eventually take it out in no time. And then afterwards, I can take out the rest of his Pokemon very quickly, and his final Pokemon is Espeon. I use one Return on it, and then I am able to take out his entire team for a final time of 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 37 seconds, with 10 resets at level 73, and a game time of 5 hours and 37 minutes. I actually managed to be 20 seconds faster than Espeon, even though I probably had more resets than it. My prediction for why this is the case is because since Umbreon is just way more bulky than Espeon is, even though I can't hit as hard, I am able to survive a lot more hits and just not really struggle on a bunch of hard fights like Espeon did, but still, 20 seconds apart, like, these are very close times. You can also tell since Umbreon has less game time than Espeon by 3 minutes, that means Umbreon has had more resets. Even though some of the fights took longer, it's had more resets, which meant it had a shorter game time, which is honestly quite an interesting result. Usually you don't see lower game times from Pokemon where the battles took longer because Espeon couldn't really hit that hard. But still, this was a pretty interesting video to do, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow my socials if you want to see more, and support the channel, such as Patreon and memberships, where you can see exclusive bonus sections to my videos, such as me taking on the second round of the Elite Four. Pokemon Crystal videos don't have a second round, but I do plenty of other games that have them, so be sure to become a member or patron if you want to see those. But if not, likes and comments are good enough for me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.